better.
That's great.
Hello, everybody. It's just a couple of minutes after 11. 2 weeks in a row on time. I had 2 interviews where I was like a half hour, 45 minutes late because of traffic and weirdness, and so weird.
It's LA.
Yeah, well, that was in the desert.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, hi, it's me, Natalie from Creative Makers, and I'm so happy you're here. And I am here today with Brianna. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Okay. I'm just going to set up my iPad really quick so that, again, you don't have to see my nostril. Hello, first person.
Ooh,
Hello.
We have a watcher.
Yes.
Cool.
It happens. It happens.
And people are all over the country?
Yeah, all over the country and all over Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
There's a lot of Canadians. This is a fellow Canadian, people.
Hi,
Fellow
Canadians.
Canadian. Natalie Fertino's live. That's what I want to hear. Okay, so if I'm live, where am I? Hello? It thinks that I'm not live. Oh, these things. Oh, here we go. There we go.
Oh, nice.
This is what I wanted to see.
Cool. All right.
Okay. You can just stick that over by me and I'll just look at it periodically later. There's always a delay. It's really interesting. All right. So, Clifton, hi. Nice to see you. He's the one I was telling you that I was writing about his technical abilities and the flip phone situation. We were talking about how to make it easier for people, digitally speaking, because there's lots of people that don't know. But in any case, we'll figure that one out later. All right, so I'm going to start here by asking you my one and only question, and then we just sort of jump off from there.
Okay.
You look afraid.
42 is the answer. Always the answer.
Good. I know that answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, I want to know about what creativity looked like for you as a kid.
As a kid? Okay,
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question.
How did it start?
How did I start? I think...
I mean, were you a marks maker? I don't know.
I was a doodler and a Lego builder.
Oh.
I remember when I was really young, my mom went to a church bazaar and got me a box of Legos. Just random stuff, just like no sets. This is before they had like space Lego and all the cool stuff, right? It was just like
it was just the blocks.
Yeah, exactly, right. So so I expressed myself creatively through Legos, and then also through I used to design fonts, like letter forms.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, a lot. I would sketch and doodle, and then when I was in junior high, grade 7, I took my first computer science class, and it was on the Apple II at the time. And so I started learning how to make graphics using BASIC, using plotting points on the screen using BASIC. Really slow, methodical, and just so laborious, but I was hooked.
But before getting to 7th grade, I mean, did you have like an interest in art, or was it just sort of?
It didn't really happen that way. I guess I didn't take art classes.
It wasn't a call.
It wasn't like a thing that I had to do until I think it was just a lot of doodling, a lot of sketching. I didn't really it was just. I just kind of fell into it. It's funny.
So it was computer science that actually called you first.
And computer animation, yeah. And it was through, I think in the mid '80s when the first computer animated music video came out, Dire Straits, "Money for Nothing."
Money for Nothing.
It was the
That's
Money for Nothing
old
song. Yep. And I remember watching that on MTV. It was brand new. MTV was like brand new, and I was just like, oh, that's so cool. And then I started going to like computer animation festivals. I was living in Calgary at the time. This is where I grew up, and my mother was a computer programmer, so I was always around computers. And she had some connects at University of Calgary that when I was in high school, they let me come and hang out in the computer science department and see what they were working on. And they were developing like, I remember this one animation they had of like a train that went over this chasm with these tracks, and then all of a sudden it just went and just like totally went soft. And so they were like experimenting with making things soft back in like the 80s, and it was, you know, when everything was really hard edged.
I was going to say, this is a really interesting thing to think about because, I mean, we don't even think about it that way anymore. We think about animation can do anything,
Yeah.
and computers can do anything, and thinking about this was a whole new adventure.
It was a whole new thing. All the research that was being done in universities at the time was just all groundbreaking. And so I was really like, you know, I was really into that path, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go to university. I'm going to study computer science. And I got there and started studying computer science and hit the wall of math, hit the wall of calculus, hit the wall of linear algebra, all these prerequisites they force you to take to be a programmer.
Right.
Right. You know, my mom was a programmer, so I was like, oh, that's going to be my path. And I realized at the time I wanted to be more of an artist. I was, yeah, it was like, I was less about being a computer scientist and being like, oh, actually, it's the art that really attracts me. But computer science wasn't my path, so I ended up studying psychology, and I studied human perception, how we perceive reality through basically how our eyes and ears take in visual and auditory stimuli, and then studying the neural pathways of the brain. So that was really interesting to me.
That's a really interesting aside to the art. I mean, because art is all about how do people look at things.
Exactly. Yeah. How do people perceive color? How do people perceive, you know, how does the eye work? So we studied, you know, how electrons, like how the eye takes the photons, converts it into a chemical path, and then sends that into the brain, into the different areas of the brain. So that's what I studied.
It's so interesting because this sounds very mathematical to me in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, it's got formulas. There's
not really, actually.
You don't think
No,
so?
no,
No?
it wasn't really so much. Yeah, I mean, we studied statistics, but that was it, like just as part of the program. But then, you know, it was kind of like, oh, what am I going to do with this, right? So then I decided to double major in geography, and I studied landform processes and geographic information systems. So I got out of school 7 years later, you know, with this double major in psychology and geography, and then I got my first job out of school, which was, I thought I was going to be doing a mapping job, and it was just technical tracing out maps for utility lines in North Dakota, of all places. So I lasted 2 months at that job. So, and I was really like, okay, what is it that I really want to do? Because I mean, I didn't get to being a creative, you know, as a child. I had to find my way there through this process of discovering all these, you know, trying something out and realizing that's not what I want to do. Okay, I'm going to try this out, and that's not what I want to do. So I was working with a friend of mine. Actually, I was in the Canadian Army at the time too. So in the reserves, and one of my friends from our unit started a computer company, and so I took on Photoshop and started designing his ads for the local newspaper. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I really like, you know, I love this process of taking these ideas and making them real. And so I kind of like reignited my passion for art making, and I was like, you know what, maybe I need to go to art school. Maybe I need to attend art college. And so I started looking into the process of what that was going to take. I was working at the time at the university I graduated from, and so I started taking night classes and drawing classes at night, and I was like, I just fell right into it. I was just like, okay, this is
How old
it.
were you at this point?
I was in my 20s.
So you were in mid to late 20s?
Mid 20s, I would say.
Mid 20s.
Yeah.
So I mean, all of this has unfolded very quickly. I mean, from getting out of college to figuring out that you know, making maps of North Dakota, tracing maps of North Dakota, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then just being in the Army and everything else. I mean, that just.
Yeah.
And then you were just like, I'm just gonna start taking these drawing classes.
I'm going to take these night classes.
That is late for art.
It is late.
I mean, for acknowledging that. I mean, there's plenty of people that do that, but you know, to make a big career out of it.
Well, because I think, you know, I think I was kind of, you know, the programming I got from society is you can't make it as an artist. You know, this is like in the 80s and 90s. You can't make a career out of making art at the time, right? That's kind of what the general idea was.
Oh, I think that's still a pretty good idea.
I mean, it's tough. Don't get me wrong. It is tough for sure. But yeah, so I had some mentors that I had met as well through taking these night classes, like some instructors who were really just like saw my talent, and they were just like, you really should consider going here full time. So I applied, got in my first attempt, and that was in 1997 at Alberta College of Art and Design. Actually, now it's Alberta University of Arts, and I crushed it. I was like the valedictorian when I graduated in 2001. I had like
And what was your formal major at that point?
visual communications.
Visual communications.
Yeah, so design, graphic design, illustration. We started getting into more and more into digital work. So, and I already had Photoshop. I mean, I had 5 years of Photoshop under my belt when I got to art college. So I was
You
just
were
like
ahead of the
running
game.
laps around everybody. Everybody was like coming to me for help, especially on the computer side.
Right.
These like high school students who never really touched the computer.
Well, I mean, at that point too, I mean, the late 90s, it was still sort of early in the game. I mean, people were just at the brink of every household having at least one computer
Yeah, absolutely.
and figuring it out. I mean,
Yeah.
people were still just using it for email and
Exactly.
that's
And at
about
that point,
it.
I was actually building computers because I had worked with my friend at his shop, and in summer jobs, I was building computers with him and everything. We were gaming and everything. So I was really into the hardware as well as all the Adobe stuff. So then once we started going digital, it was just so easy. But I mean, don't get me wrong, art college was tough. It was way harder than university because you have to produce. You can't just skate by and kind of like
No, there's no learning things passively.
No.
I mean, it's active, it's hands-on. There's
Very much
time
so.
put into
Yeah.
it. It's not just you thinking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And learning about the creative process and executing your ideas, coming up with good ideas, working with people and instructors, and working with other students, group projects and stuff like that. So, I mean, I thrived. It was like I did so much better in art college than I did in university. 'Cause, university I was kind of like, what am I doing here?
Right, but by that point you figured it out and you were excited about life.
Super excited.
Yeah.
And then so I graduated. I literally had like 5 job offers on the table immediately.
Wow.
And I took what I thought was going to be the best job, and that was being an environmental graphic designer. And for a large national company in Canada that's done a lot of major campaigns.
What does an environmental graphic designer actually do?
I'm glad you asked.
I'm just like, trees?
No, not at all. Actually, so it's graphic design in the physical environment. So it's kind of interesting because it's like it's design that's sort of hidden. So when you go to an airport, you see all the signage that tells you where to go. There's wayfinding. That's one major component of it.
Right, somebody's got to design that. We don't even think about it. We just think of it as signage.
Exactly.
Somebody just knew what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Mapping was a big, strong component of it. So I already had cartography under my belt, so I was doing a lot of maps for airports and convention centers. But then also we were doing a lot of museum display design, and that's actually what attracted me to it. So
we were talking about this when we first met.
Exactly. Yeah. So I ended up doing some displays at NHL Hall of Fame in Toronto. And then we designed an aquarium in Belgium called Aquatopia, which was really cool. So I designed all the displays and the digital displays, actually. So that's when I started really getting into the digital work.
So just to be clear for my lovely audience, I mean, when we're talking about cartography and about you working for museums and stuff, I mean, you're like talking about the maps that people get when they walk in the museum, and it says you are here, and these are, as an example,
this is
where you want to go, and
yeah, that's one way, or maps that are displayed, but also the graphics on the walls, like. So we did a lot of theming. So nowadays airports have a lot of art displays around.
Right.
So that's all part of it. So we had to do like a lot of the theming for Calgary Airport. Convention centers have art as well. So that involves like working with artists, like local artists, and helping to choose what's going to go where, what's going to be the most impactful piece of art that people are going to see when they come to the airport, because everybody's in a hurry.
Yeah, I love when I see artwork at the airport. It just makes me slow down and sort of take it all in. By the way, she is not making me cry. We're sitting outside, and there's a little bit of wind, and it's catching the corner of my eye, and it keeps watering. So I'm not crying.
All good.
You're not making me cry. Okay. All right, good.
So I did that for 5 years, and it was really interesting because, again, it was sort of one of those things where I'm just like, I don't think this really fulfills me. I was like, got to pay off my student loan pretty quickly, which is great. But I was like, what am I passionate about? And I was really kind of like, I'm really passionate about computer animation. That was it. So what I ended up doing was, while I was working, I started teaching myself 3D animation and started learning some of the software packages. And at the time, I was a DJ and VJ and event producer as well in my part-time. So I started making visuals for DJ shows and learning the software through the process of creating abstract visuals and stuff that people can see when they go to dance parties. And that's actually how I learned. And so fast forward, I ended up moving to Vancouver, worked for a company, and then moved to California in 2009 after Obama got elected. Because I was like, hey, Obama got elected, right? Because I'm a dual citizen. I was born in the U.S. I was born in Seattle, so I was able to just, I'm able to come and go as I please. So I ended up working in the Bay Area for a while, designing websites and doing more design work, just as an independent freelancer, while I was like really deeply teaching myself more about the CG, because I'm being self-taught. You kind of have to.
Let's talk about that for a second, because being self-taught is we were talking about it just before we jumped on here about learning something new and the value in having somebody show you what to do.
Yeah.
But learning, self-teaching, got any tips on that? Because obviously you're a hard worker and you decided that you wanted to do something and you just did it.
Yeah.
A lot of people have this feeling, but then can't get themselves to make the commitment to themselves.
Well, one of the things that I think that I really took from going to university first is learning how to learn. And that was really crucial.
Explain.
So it's the first time you really have to be self-motivated. Like you're not,
right.
When you go
nobody's pushing you.
Nobody's pushing you, right?
They don't care. Yeah.
They'll just take your money.
Yeah.
So you really have to be self-motivated. You have to learn how to just get going on your own, not procrastinate, although I was a terrible procrastinator. Did everything at the last minute. But you really have to learn how to learn first, and then from there, it's really it's a process of motivation. It's really about like, what is your goal? What is your ambition? How serious are you at it? And how do you get there? And can you, and if you can't, then can you hire someone or get someone to help you? And like we were talking about learning the bass guitar like earlier, right? Because you play bass. So it's like, I'm kind of like, well, I've had this bass for a year, and actually now I'm trying to like motivate myself to play it, but maybe I should just start taking lessons. So a lot of the times, if you want to learn a new skill, there's nothing wrong with finding a teacher.
Yeah, no, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
That's the way I learn best personally, but
yeah. So I feel like in this day and age, in 2023 now?
Yes,
there's so many resources online.
Yeah.
So many resources.
Well, yes, if you're a self-motivated person, there's a way to learn how to do everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, I want to jump in and see what's going on here. Okay. So let's
5
see.
viewers. Nice.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Swipe left to reveal comments. Okay, hello, we know Clifton's here. I thought I saw there. Hi, Dan. I thought there was other things. Oh, here we go.
I should be on someone's board of directors. Oh, that's funny.
Man, she is so smart and articulate. That's what Clifton's saying. And she should be on somebody's board of directors. She absolutely should be. Because, she's got this all mapped out here. All right. Good point. All right, so let's talk about what you do now.
Okay.
And, this is so specific to me. Please explain.
Okay, so
I tried to, but I'm not sure if I got it across to everybody.
I think like what I do mostly, I think right now, my specialization, I'm a computer animator. I've done work for small clients and large clients, but what I love to do is I make visual content for the dome industry. And what that means is, and this is like, nobody knows about this because it's so small, but there are like basically like, what a planetarium is, right? Everybody's been to a planetarium. Well, in the late 90s, early 2000s, they started all going digital, and they they took out their star globes and they started putting in projectors. And when I moved to LA, I started working for one of the companies that was one of the people, Ed Lance, who was very closely responsible for a lot of this process. And when they put in these digital projection systems, basically it opened up the whole world to creating content that wasn't necessarily planetarium or science-based, because the vast majority of dome content right now is science-based, because that's just what planetariums are looking for. They have to show it because they're all generally government funded. But now they're opening themselves up to more entertainment-based experiences. So what I do is I create entertainment-based content for 360 immersive content for like VR and domes, so that you're basically inside the projection, you're inside the content, you're not just seeing it through a window. So the idea is, when you go to a show, there's this separation between you and the performers, and it's called a proscenium, right? And so in 360, there's no proscenium, there's no separation between yourself and the
right, you're just in it.
You're in it. And
so I mean, so I'm clarifying mostly for myself, but just for all of you, if you're not following, I mean, we're talking about venues, like artistic venues, or just even venues just for venue's sake. You would go to see a show that was done digitally this way, and it's everywhere. It's all around you, and it's above you in often dome-shaped type buildings, right?
They're literally hemispheres.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, take a sphere, cut it in half.
Okay.
You're inside this hemisphere.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we've got there's a venue here in LA called Wisdom out in the Arts District, and that has dome projections. So if you ever want to, I mean, they have events there all the time. So if you ever want to check it out, you can always go and check out one of their things too.
Good to know.
Yeah. And then there's a huge new dome being built in Las Vegas right now, the Madison Square Garden Sphere. And that is the world's first and largest full LED dome, because everything we've done before has been with projectors. And they finally figured out how to take LEDs, which are typically, on an XY flat plane, and they figured out how to put it on a sphere.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. I was going to say, how do you figure out content to be done in that way? Because now you're not just thinking about content in front of you. You're thinking about content over peripherally. You're thinking about content behind you. You're thinking about content above you and all the spaces in between.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you even begin to figure that out, or figure out what you want there?
Well, it's interesting because you have to unlearn everything you know first, because everybody learns on a screen, right? Everybody does animation on a screen. So you have to basically break that habit. You have to think in a sphere. You have to think of, like, what do I see when I'm standing in reality? And it's really about observing reality a lot. So I think one of the things I really learned at going to art college was how to observe reality. And so my motivation has always been to create better and better content that looks more and more like reality, that's more and more physically realistic. And now the tools are so realistic that it's mind-blowing.
Now, do you start with a digital, like a picture, like I don't want to say portrait, I'm thinking in art terms, but like a photograph, and then expanding the photograph from there? Or are you starting from scratch completely and constructing it light piece by light piece?
Yes, I mean, it's all about constructing from scratch, but using visual reference material.
Okay.
So the part of the process of observation is to collect reference first. So one of the things you learn in art college is about research, reference, getting visual material, setting a look, creating a style, and then I just start sitting down and start creating, and I'm just sort of creating in a, thinking that the camera's going to be in the middle and there's going to be all this stuff going on around it. So it
sounds uber complicated to me.
I mean, it's once you get it, it's easy, but I've taught a few people, but you have to kind of get it first.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with a dome festival now called Dome Fest West that's out here in Costa Mesa every year. And so I was a judge last year, and I got to see like a lot of content coming in from around the world.
That must have been interesting to see how everybody else is interpreting this new medium.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because there's a lot of content that comes out of Europe because there's such a strong dome community, because there's been dome festivals out there like Jena in Germany, in East Germany, or what, Germany now, is like the big festival. There's festivals in the UK, and all these festivals, what they do is they start spawning off artists who come, and everybody who comes and sees content in a dome is inspired. You can't not be inspired. Like, you just see it and you're just like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I really want to get my hands on this.
It's one of those things, though, that when I think about it, it may very well be really cool and wanting to get your hands on it. But how do you even get your hands on it? It's like, it's not like a tangible, I can't purchase a dome, and you know what I mean?
True. No,
you know what I mean? And walk into it on a day-to-day basis and immerse myself in different forms of that art.
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky because when I was working with Vortex, we had a dome up down at LA Center Studios. That was our testing dome, and then we had public events as well. So, you know, I got to see, like, you know, when I first started with the content, and what initially attracted me to this world was through the festivals and through Burning Man and going to events where domes existed, but they didn't have projections. And so I actually owned my own 36-foot dome that I used to tour around with in Canada, in Western Canada, and set up at events.
36 across?
36-foot diameter.
Okay, diameter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's enough to fit in a U-Haul, actually. It's,
oh my gosh.
So
and you would just set it up, and would you charge people?
I mean, we get a little bit of a budget, but mostly it was just for the love of doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, so I used to work at Shambhala Music Festival up in Canada for a number of years, and we would do the dome as one of the chill stages for another stage. And it just got bigger and bigger every year, and got more and more involved until I was, you know, realizing, wow, this needs to be like, this needs to be a thing. You know, I was really like, and then when I came to LA, it was a thing. It was like, oh, right. Or I started going to Burning Man too. I was seeing domes everywhere, and then we set up a dome in 2011 called the Holosphere, and we had a really basic projection system, and it was like a curved mirror that can project on the dome, because it's the thing is you have to warp your imagery because you're projecting on a hemisphere. Right,
it's no longer flat.
Exactly. So you have to deal with all that. And just through that process, I was hooked. I was like, this is so cool. I gotta do this. And yeah, I ended up here in LA and working with Vortex, and now, you know, as a freelancer, and I have other clients as well, and that's what I do now. But I don't always do dome content. There's other stuff I do as well. So
now, how do you get your inspiration? I mean, are people coming to you and saying, this is what we do, and I want something around whatever this is? Or are they coming to you and saying, you know what, I have no idea what I want, and I need suggestions? Both?
Yeah.
So on the ones where people need suggestions and they don't give you anything to jump off of, where do you go? What do you do?
Generally, you start with the theme and the concept. Like, what are you trying to communicate? And this is where my visual communications background comes in handy. So it's really like drawing out, what are you trying to communicate? What's your message? You know, and then from there we just work out what the concept's going to look like. We did a lot of corporate work when I was working there for a while. So we did events for Microsoft, Nickelodeon. We did some like Disney stuff, and so they generally have an idea what they want.
Yeah.
You know, but now I'm working more like the images that I sent you were from a show called The Journey.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm working with the musicians who have this piece of music that needs to be interpreted. And it's like, okay, what are we doing? So we're basically creating a soul's journey from stardust to Earth and back again. How do we do that?
Right. I mean, just that sentence, that sentence of what are we doing and what we're creating is so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, you know, there's a really long process. There was a really long process of figuring out like each theme for each musical track. Mm-hmm. You know, we start in space, so we start in the nebulas, and then we kind of floor our way through the planets. And one of the musicians, Michael, used to be a writer for Star Trek Voyager, so we referenced the shot of going through the Saturn's rings, and that's really, when you see it in the dome, like you see it, you feel like you're flying through the rings. It's really profound, actually. So for me, it's always like, okay, like you're in this environment, this fully immersive environment. What can we do visually that will, make people sit up and take notice?
There's part of this that's bringing a reference to like Disneyland or like rides,
Hmm.
because I mean, I'm not trying to be trivial here, so bear with me as I try to explain myself. I'm thinking about like the rides where they put you in a seat,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden there is an immersive picture going on,
Yeah.
and then the seats start to shake as if you're going through space, and and then they tilt you back like you're falling or whatever, and yet you have this whole picture. Is this an offshoot of, or maybe it was the beginning of
Kind of the beginning.
the beginning
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Dome
Those are like the 4D rides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are very immersive.
Yeah.
And you're not actually going anywhere, but the illusion is you're going somewhere. So you're
Right.
working with the illusion, because the beauty about immersive projections is that when your periphery is filled with what you're seeing, why it breaks down and why, like you see why IMAX is so popular is because the screens are so huge.
Right.
And you're sitting in the screen and it's taking up your periphery. Well, there's actually a scientific basis that your brain starts to say, oh, I'm actually here. And that's why virtual reality is becoming so amazing too, because your brain can't tell the difference when you're in a VR headset and you see something photorealistic. Your brain does not tell the difference.
Right. It doesn't know.
It doesn't know. So the more immersive you can get, then the more your brain thinks it's actually there.
It's so interesting on a psychological level, and how we can change circumstances with that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You can change perspectives of the world with that.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so powerful. And so it's about creating a positive message.
Right.
Right.
Right. You wouldn't want to put this in the wrong context at all.
Exactly. I mean, there are horror games and things like that are popular, but I'm not drawn to that. Yeah, exactly. I think what really draws me to the Dome world is that you're having a collective experience. You're in an audience. VR headset is very isolating. So you're in this collective experience with an audience, and you're all having this experience at the same time. It's really profound. You're connecting with all these people around you, whether you know it or not, right? Because you're having this experience with people, and it's very powerful. It can be very positive. So I'm really drawn to projects that are really about meditation, creating a positive impact. Peaceful, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, like, on a world scope, what that could do. I mean, what if we took combative people and stuck them all in a VR experience or some sort of a Dome experience in which they had to be, they had to feel
empathy.
Yes, empathy, peacefulness, unity with the other human beings, no matter what the conditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how would that change worldviews?
I mean, it's a really profound question, because I think if
it's so profound now, I feel like I'm going to cry,
right.
Because I'm just thinking about how incredible this would be.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we're really about growing this industry and allowing more and more people to experience it, because everybody that experiences our shows that we're creating, like I worked on a show called Mesmerica, which was James Hood's magnum opus, basically, and it toured around, like, I don't even know how many domes it was, but it was highly successful, and it was very much a meditative experience, and people were crying and just like having this experience. The Journey, we haven't toured yet because we've only done a 10-minute demo, and now we're actually going to launch a Kickstarter next month to raise the capital to do a full hour version. But so far we've already been in 6 international Dome festivals around the world. So
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, just for a 10-minute demo.
So just so you guys know, I mean, this is one of those situations where I can't take you to a Dome so that you can see this work.
I wish.
And we have nothing to show you, like right here in front of us. That's why I posted a few of those pictures that Brianna sent me, and they look just like circles, but I mean, it is actually the view as if you're sort of laying on your back, I guess, from a dome perspective.
Yeah, what you're seeing is a warped fisheye perspective. So that is called a dome master, that circle, and that's what we project in the dome, and actually there's multiple projectors, so it's basically split up through software and then stitched onto the dome, so it's seamless. But you're actually in a fisheye, so that's why it looks like that. It's all kind of warped and looking, and so weird looking. So I was gonna send you the HD stuff, but I thought, yeah, it's cooler to send the fisheye because I think it looks cool.
Whatever you want to send, that's
Yeah.
fine. And whatever you want to post, if you want to post more things
Okay.
about this, I don't know if you have like actual any. I don't even know how you would post footage like on a flat
Yeah.
medium and try to get your point across. You know what I mean?
I mean, I can post the actual 10-minute film. It's on my Vimeo, but I could put a link on the
why
site.
don't you do
Yeah,
that?
and so you
people
you
can
can
jump on
basically
and
people
see.
watch it, and then you can imagine that you're in a dome watching this and hearing this incredible music. It's all the Tibetan bowls and voices and stuff.
Yeah,
really great musicians.
That is so cool. All right, I'm looking now to see questions, and I love how this is on delay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, so yeah, there's hi Dan. I said hi Georgia. Hi Chris. Hi. Okay, so Georgia, is that what they're doing with the immersive art shows in 360 degrees? I think we're talking about like the Van Gogh shows, and I think there's somebody else that are doing that.
They
too.
did a Frida Kahlo show as well. Yeah.
I have to tell you, I did not. I went to the Van Gogh one. I did not love it. Sorry. Did you love it?
I did not love
see
it. I did see it.
I thought it was
kind of hokey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of sort of to me it looked like a college level After Effects project. Yeah. So, but
I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought it was.
But I appreciate what they're doing. I appreciate that they're trying to create immersion.
Well, and maybe if I wasn't an artist, it wouldn't I wouldn't have had that point of view. But I went with another artist, and she and I were both having this feeling. I know that there's other artists that have gone that think it's wonderful and amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just not my point of view.
Well, it's I call it like semi-immersion. They were projecting on the floor and they had walls, but the problem is they have flat walls. It's not
right. You're not in it.
You're not in it. You always feel like you're in a room.
Right.
Right. And so it's interesting because when I went to the Van Gogh, I was kind of like wandering around, and then I went up to the mezzanine level and looked down, and actually it was more interesting from the mezzanine level than it was from the ground level where you're supposed to watch it from.
Yeah. In case you guys don't know, and we have this in LA, and I'm kind of assuming maybe this is touring the country, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a Van Gogh exhibit where they have set it to music, and they have like his paintings morphing into other paintings and the story of his life playing in the background. And the projection is happening on the walls, on the floors, on the ceilings?
No.
Not on the ceilings.
No.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But and it runs like 15 minutes or something.
It's like on a loop.
Yeah, it runs like 15 minutes or something, and then you can go to the gift store where they try to take all your money. And they do. They've got cool stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it's a good idea. It's a good idea, but in my point of view, it wasn't executed very well.
Well, again, they didn't project on the ceiling because the projectors are in the ceiling.
Right.
So you have a black ceiling. They're trying to hide everything up there. And the difference of what we do is you're laying back.
Right.
And
you have no idea where it's coming from. It's coming from within.
Kind of. Yeah. Well, you can see the projectors.
I can't see them. I'm not looking.
Yeah. But it more replicates reality because when you look in the world, you see everything everywhere. You don't see a black ceiling covering everything up. Right.
You don't see where walls are joined. You
Exactly.
don't see where people are sitting. In the design.
Yeah, exactly.
Real humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as an immersive evangelist, I would have to say that actually no, that's not immersive.
Immersive evangelist.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So if you want immersion, put on a VR headset. That's really
Yeah.
And actually we can actually simulate a dome inside a VR headset.
Oh,
and we
see,
have
no,
done
that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dan says, in the 70s, I used to frequent the McLaughlin Planetarium Laser Show.
Mm-hmm.
Laser Floyd was the birth of laser shows. This is totally true.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people went to those.
Also, Clifton's asking, Also, why psychedelics are so powerful and potentially useful. I think this is just a comment about the immersiveness in it. Am I getting that right, Clifton? I hope so.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell anybody to take psychedelics when they go see a show, but it doesn't hurt.
No comment. Georgia says, "I'm so glad you both said about the whole thing that the whole thing was hokiness."
Hokiness.
I'm so glad you felt that way too, Georgia. Like I said, I know other artists that liked it.
Let's just say I was just less than impressed, but it takes a lot to impress me. Let me just say that.
I sort of feel the same way about things
and I
like
cannot
that.
wait till the Madison Square Gardens Dome is open in Las Vegas, because it's going to be mind blowing.
It's going to be a game changer.
Game changer, for the industry here, and I think they're building one here in LA too.
Oh, cool.
Potentially, yeah.
So where are you hoping to go with all of this? I mean, this is sort of like, you're in it, and I just don't even know how it would advance.
I'm just going to keep making content and great shows,
do you see a pathway for it to get even bigger and better? Do you see stuff on the horizon that's going to change that? More domes. More domes.
Yeah, actually, right now I'm in the process of helping to design a complex in Phoenix that's potentially going to be a 3-dome dome multiplex with other stuff going on around it. So we're working on popping up domes.
Do you think that we're ever going to get to the point where like movie making is actually going to be happening in this completely immersive experience?
We're waiting for that to happen.
I'm expecting that. I mean, we might be 20 or 30 years out of that, because
I think it's less than that.
You think it's less than that?
Like 5 to 10 years.
Ooh.
Yeah. I think as the domes get potentially more popular, like if they prove to be as popular as we're hoping, then I think filmmakers will start to get more involved, because that's one of the things we really need is more narrative storytelling. One of the things that I really noticed about judging the submissions to DomeFest was that the vast majority of it was abstract, kind of artistic, experimental stuff, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of, but then there were some really powerful narrative pieces that, even though they were short, that just really hit you. There's one piece about dementia called Grandma's House, and it was so cool because you fly in the window and you're in this living room, and there's voiceover talking about Grandma's house and what they see and all the things they talk about, and then you fly out the window and then you come back, and it's kind of like this looping piece. But every time you go in, the words are a little bit more jumbled, and then the visuals start to get more jumbled.
Oh, so it's immersing you in dementia.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
And then by the time it's done, 5 minutes later, it's so jumbled and so confusing, and you come out of it going, wow, I think I can really understand what dementia patients go through. And that is the power of immersion. That is the power of being in the experience, so that you can really empathize with the content. And I think I think that was my favorite piece.
I was just thinking about, I was having funny thoughts about, if we could just fly to places where people were more antagonistic and put a dome over them, and
right.
and surprise them with content that would make them feel and be empathetic.
Yeah.
I was thinking how wonderful that would be, and then I just caught myself going, oh, but what if it goes into the wrong hands? And what if, there are domes put up for propaganda and dogma and, horrible situations, reasons to hate other people? I don't like. You have to think of both sides of that coin.
Yeah,
I only want to see the good sides,
sure,
most definitely. But I scared myself a little bit.
But I feel like there's a bit of a barrier to entry, and I feel like to be a producer in this world, you have to really want it, and you have to really understand it. So I feel like the propagandists and the people who are trying to like push a negative message, they already have the tools. They already know what they're working with. You have YouTube, like you have people pushing all kinds of propaganda on YouTube. It's easy for them to do that, and they have an audience, right? The dome audience is very small. It's a tiny little niche, and we're hoping to grow that. But
I was going to say I'm not expecting that it's going to stay small at all.
Yeah, hopefully not. Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say, like, there are dome festivals that happen around the world consistently that people can go to. They're open publicly. And if you go to fulldomedatabase.org, fddb.org, they have a listing of the dome festivals that happen around the world. So
when we're done with this,
Mhm.
and I put this up, will you jump online and like just put places that
Yeah.
people can see
Absolutely.
domes and stuff?
Yeah.
Because I know I'm never going to remember.
Sure.
And even though you just said that to me, and
Yeah.
I could rewatch it, and I will, doesn't mean I still remember.
No problem. I'll put some links in there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
That way people can investigate that. I'm expecting though that this will, I mean, the only barrier I can really see to having everybody have this experience is money. But I would expect, as everything over time, and as things are finessed and streamlined, that there will be easier and faster ways to create all these things, the structures that hold the domes, the way the films are made, so to speak, all of that stuff. It will become a fast. I mean, I'm sure that there will be in the future an app to make your own dome that you just, I don't even know. I can't even imagine how that would work.
Yeah.
But you put in a few images, and it either can extend your image or create additional images to go with it.
Well, there's more tools now because companies are getting on the VR bandwagon.
Yeah.
Right. So there's more VR cameras coming out.
Right.
That they're not cheap, but they exist. Right. So and it really is the VR industry that's pushing that. There's more tools like After Effects, for example, and Premiere, like Adobe has tools built in now that used to be third-party plugins. You used to have to go and get them. Now they're just built in. And so, one of the tools is actually converting VR to full dome. So there's a bit of a process that goes through that as well, because it is a bit technical. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
and I don't expect that it's easy, but I do expect that people are going to, if it becomes more popular, and like I said, I expect that it will be, that people will begin to try and figure this out for the general masses.
I hope so. I really do.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, and I just want to put it out there that if anybody is really serious about this, that there are resources, and I can help point people in the right direction, or that sort of stuff.
If any of you are curious about this, Brianna is contactable.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, she's in the group, and she's got a Facebook page, and I'm sure that you have Instagram and all the rest of that stuff too.
All the social medias.
Yeah, all the social medias, and we'll get all that information and put it up.
Yeah.
All right, I see things rolling by. Let's see what's going on. Let's see. Georgia says, I'd rather just go to an art museum and see the work that way.
Oh, Van Gogh, yeah.
Yes.
I've been to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam.
In Amsterdam.
Yeah, it was quite good. And then I went to the Frida Kahlo Museum in Mexico too, which is great.
To the Blue House?
The Blue House.
Yeah. I haven't been there, but I want to.
So good.
Clifton says, my first major was psychology, which
cool.
I completed.
Nice.
Yeah, which is, I think it's always nice to have that sort of like self-reflective background for anything you do.
Actually,
especially for art.
For art, and when I was in design school, they actually were saying, you should take psychology classes, and just because it's so important to understand human nature when you're making art. What is it that people like? What is it that's attractive to people? Just understanding humanity is really, really profound.
Understanding humanity, exactly. She could add value to any number of creative endeavors.
Ooh, very cool.
Clifton adding his 2 cents. And Georgia says also that she took a ton of psychology in college.
Nice.
Which, if you saw her work is definitely, I don't know why I'm closing that up. Her work definitely reflects that.
Right.
Questions, iconology and self-worth and self-reflective values. It's really, really great stuff. I love Georgia's stuff.
Very cool.
I love Clifton's stuff too, to be honest.
I'll definitely go and check it out. So, and it's interesting because now I'm actually starting to branch out into metaverse worlds and building worlds for people to experience, not in a dome, but through like an online portal or virtual reality headset as well. So.
Okay, a virtual reality headset I can wrap my head around.
Yeah.
but like online portals.
Mhm.
What can you please explain what that
So-
is? And also, let's talk about the metaverse.
Yeah, let's. Yeah,
Please
a lot of
explain
people are
it.
talking about metaverse right now.
Let's explain the metaverse. Go ahead.
So, I mean, the metaverse are basically online worlds.
Okay.
And it's interesting because I read a lot of cyberpunk in the 90s, and they were really talking about these online worlds that people would experience digitally. And it's almost like a second layer of reality. And one of the first metaverse, I mean, I think it would be technically called a metaverse world, was Second Life. That came out in the late 90s.
Oh yeah, I
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still up, believe it
Yeah,
or not.
yeah,
There's people
I
still
believe
on
it.
it. Yeah, exactly. There's, multi user online games nowadays. I mean, those could be called a metaverse world.
I mean, this is even before Second Life, but like Sims games where you're creating your own cities. Is that
Kind of.
so kind of
Yeah.
on the way to it?
Yeah, but I think the difference is that a metaverse world is something that has multiple users
Mm.
experiencing it. So a sim, I don't know if they have an online version of Sims,
I
but
thought they did. But
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's kind of like it, kind of like a metaverse world.
Mhm.
So right now I'm working, we're building a world for a library system out of Colorado.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that their users can come and interact with each other, and access online resources. They can access ebooks and music, and they can listen to music. And
What
stuff.
an interesting thing. Do you think that kind of got amplified with the pandemic?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it supercharged it because people are just like, oh, I want to meet people, but I don't want to.
Right. I can't
you know?
go outside.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't look at you face to face, lest I get diseased.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So where it goes from now, because we're out of the pandemic apparently, but maybe another one could happen.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently. Yeah. And can another one happen? Yes. Will it?
Potentially.
Probably.
Yeah, exactly. Will it be worse? Who knows?
I hope.
So yeah, ask away. I think there's a lot of potential. What really appeals to me is the world building aspect. Whether it's a library system or it's a game world or something, I just love building worlds. I love and now we have tools like Unreal Engine that really facilitate that process and make it a lot easier.
It's really interesting having many users use these things, because then it does become more like real world stuff. I mean, you can only control what you have access to. You can't control what other people do, and I mean that's what we all live in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they become more like, they become closer and closer to real worlds,
Mhm.
these virtual worlds, right? And
Right.
so that's kind of like, I mean, a lot of the metaverse worlds are super cartoony. Altspace VR was a big one that's actually now closing because Microsoft is pulling its support, but it was super cartoony. The avatars were just like a head and a torso and a pair of hands, but there are newer ones coming out now where you have like a full body avatar. You can design your avatar to look like how you want, whatever your idealized self is, you can put it in the metaverse world.
It's so interesting to me because this is such an extension of creativity that I don't think about. I don't think about, playing an online game and recreating yourself as being an extension of expression, but it absolutely is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and for a lot of younger people, it's sort of how they can explore themselves, virtually.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. All right, I'm going to take another look here, and
Okay.
I don't know what time we're at, but we're getting close there.
Okay.
I try not to let it go too long. Oh, Georgia says, thank you so much, Natalie. Yes, about your work, absolutely. Hi, Maya. Nice to see you. Imagine the Library of Alexandria times 1,000,000 available online for free.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could recreate the Library of Alexandria virtually. We could, look at the old paintings and figure out how it looked and take people there before it was destroyed. That'd be a really fun project, actually.
There you go. Now you've got your seed. It's a big seed.
Yeah, that would be a big seed. Yeah.
Got a long germination period.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm actually doing some conversations with one of my artist friends in Canada about taking his work. He designs armor for cats and mice.
Wait a minute, what? He designs
Yeah.
armor for cats and mice?
Yeah. Jeff
Why?
DeBoer. Jeff DeBoer is his name. He's a metal and jewelry. He's actually one of the artists that one of my early mentors that inspired me to go to art college. When I met him in the mid '90s. But he creates these super intricate, detailed pieces of armor, and we're like maybe talking about doing something where we can create like a virtual museum so that he can show his work in virtual space.
I just need to go back to creating armor that you would put on a pet.
Well, you don't really, because your cat would probably.
It might not like you very
No,
much,
not so
but
much.
I mean, but the intention is
Yeah.
your cat would wear this as if they were going into battle with the mouse.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah, he needs to be better known.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to help that.
Oh my gosh. All right. I think we're gonna. Hi, Anne. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry that I think we're getting ready to close up shop here pretty quick. But of course, this will be available so that you can see the whole thing. This has been a super interesting conversation.
Oh,
I had
great.
no idea where this was going to go, but I am no less pleased with all the information I got. I feel like I've extracted a bunch of stuff.
Well, I hope to see you at the next Dome Fest.
I would like to.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to tell me when that is.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be in April of 2024.
Oh.
Yeah.
And where is it?
In
Where will it
at Orange Coast College.
Oh, okay, so
in
local.
Costa Mesa.
Somewhat local,
Costa
like only
Mesa.
50 miles away from us.
Yeah, kind of local.
Well,
Yeah, but Orange County.
yeah.
Yeah, they have a planetarium there they built on campus. That is, it's a beautiful facility. So that's where we did it the first 2 years.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
I would love to be there. Are you kidding?
Yeah, great.
It's a year away, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's a year away. Yeah, and that's intentional because we used to do it in October, but it was competing with all the other Dome Fests, like some of the big ones. Like Immersa is a big one that happens every year. And that is the big sort of immersive and planetarium industry gathering. And last year it happened in Montreal. They have a dome there called SAT. Yeah, so it's kind of like experimental projection dome.
It's sort of one of those things that you'd have to look for. But I bet if you just went in and Googled, Dome Fests across the nation or something, things would pop up.
fddb.org.
Oh, which you're going to put up.
Yes, full dome
right.
database.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have anything that you would like to end with? Any messages, information you want to give anybody?
Any further questions?
Let's see. She fits in. She
All
fits right in. Thank you,
awesome.
Clifton.
I wasn't sure if my digital work was gonna fit with all the traditional painters.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an element of like we were talking about before. Wondering about how the digital's going to work. I mean, you and I didn't even touch on like everybody's craziness around the AI, the digital AI artwork and stuff. But I don't even want to.
That's a
start talking about that right
whole
now.
ball of wax.
I know it's huge.
Yeah,
Huge ball of wax that I don't want to get caught in right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. Well then, everybody have a beautiful weekend, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This will be up later if you missed it and you want to see it again. It'll be there. All right. I'll see y'all later.
Awesome.
Bye guys.